So today we're breaking down 8 different soils, and we're doing so by planting the same tomato plant in the same size container. We're looking at the ingredients, whether they might have fertilizer, the consistency, and all the different things you might want to look at when you're choosing a mix, whether you're growing in a container, a raised bed, or just purchasing soil in general. So we're going to run this test, and over the next several weeks, we'll keep updating, showing you the difference, and talking about why some might be better than others, and what we might could do to some of these soils to actually make them better, to perform better. So let's get planting. So first up, we've got Fox Farms Happy Frog potting soil. Now, right off the bat, this is really a premium potting mix. You can tell as soon as you open up the bag and you take a really good look at the soil mixture. It's light, fluffy, it drains well. It's exactly what you might expect or want for container plants. One of the biggest selling points of this soil is that it's a biologically active soil. Means it's loaded with beneficial microbes like mycorrhizal fungi. They help plant roots absorb nutrients more efficiently, and they can give your plants a strong start, especially in containers. It's made of a blend of organic ingredients, primarily made up of aged forest products, worm castings, bat guano. It'll probably also have some calcium and dolomitic lime in it, which would be really important for tomatoes to have that in the soil due to blossom end rot, which is very common. It has good drainage and great aeration, which is very beginner friendly. You can pretty much plant straight into it. I mean, it's made as a great potting mix. It's solid for vegetables and herbs, and I think it's going to do pretty good for these tomatoes. But there are a few cons. This is definitely a higher end soil when it comes to monetary value. And it doesn't last forever nutritionally, although it's amended and it's got fertilizer in it. After several weeks, the fertilizer is going to dissipate off, and tomatoes are heavy feeders. Lastly, like any quality soil or a bag product, batches are going to vary. So sometimes you might get more woody material in it than others, but overall you should get a consistent, excellent mix for planting virtually any vegetable in a container. Next up, we have Landscaper's Pride potting soil. This particular option is a lot more budget friendly than something like the Happy Frog from Fox Farms. It's a pretty common soil you'll find, and it's definitely aimed more at everyday use and maybe larger projects. When you open the bag, the first thing you'll notice is texture. It's a bit heavier than something like the Happy Frog. It's not quite as light and fluffy, but it still has a decent structure for general use. This mixture is typically made up of composted forest products, some sand and organic material, so it's designed to hold moisture a little better. This can actually be a really good thing here in Southeast Texas where things can dry out fast, and containers can definitely do that. One of the biggest pros is price here. It's a very affordable option, especially if you're filling multiple containers versus something like Happy Frog on the high end of the spectrum. It holds moisture well, which can help if you're not watering every single day in the heat, and it's a lot more readily available. But there are some trade-offs, one being drainage and aeration. They're not quite as good as the premium mixes. You may need to amend it with some perlite or maybe some aged pine bark to loosen it up, especially in containers. You can see here we had to break up some of the clumps as we were putting it in, but overall, the texture was nice. It's not fertilized. It doesn't have any amendments in it other than just having organic matter, So you're going to need to feed your plants here from the start and keep them well fed. Lastly, the consistency. You will find some pieces of organic material that are a little bit chunkier that have not been fully broken down yet, but not so large that you're going to have nitrogen immobilization or nitrogen deficiencies. So overall, Landscapers provides a solid economical choice, and it's going to be really interesting to see how it pairs up against some of the higher end mixes that we're using today. And if you're willing to tweak it a little bit and understand what makes a good soil, you can get good results without spending premium soil money. So next up on the list is Backto Premium potting soil. This one's been around for a long time, and to me, it's an old school, really no frills option, and it's probably the closest thing that I ever carried, similar to Miracle-Gro. When you open up the bag, you'll notice it's got a finer texture compared to some of the chunkier mixes, and it's usually pretty consistent. And it holds moisture really well, which can be a plus, especially in the hot climates here in Southeast Texas. The mix is primarily made up of reed sedge peat and some sand, so it will give you a stable base for planting, and it does include some synthetic coated fertilizer to help get your plants started. First off, Backto tends to be pretty uniform from bag to bag, which is something you don't always get with potting soils. It retains moisture well, so it can be forgiving if you're missing a water here and there. It's typically a middle price point. It's not the cheapest, but it's not the most premium soil either. It usually price points in around the same as most Miracle-Gro potting soils. Now, some of the things that I don't like about this soil, as you can see now, we're having to break it up. It holds moisture really well, sometimes too well. The reed sedge peat just locks onto that moisture, and it can stay too wet, not allowing great airflow. So sometimes adding a little bit of organic matter or perlite even to this mix could drastically reduce the amount of moisture, because I don't want my plant to be sitting in this much moisture most of the time. It is amended with nutrients, so just like some of the others that come with fertilizer in them, you still need to fertilize. There is not enough nutrition in this bag or soil to sustain a heavy feeding plant like a tomato throughout the growing season. Lastly, it is not a living soil or biologically active, so having some inoculant or adding some compost in here, or maybe some fertilizer with those natural biological amendments in there, could help increase the effectiveness or success of using Backto. But overall, it's a reliable, straightforward potting mix that works as a great base. And if you tweak it, it'll be even a little bit better. It's not flashy. It gets the job done pretty well. Our next soil is going to be Coast of Maine's acid-loving plant soil. This isn't just a plain potting mix. It's one that's specifically designed for plants that have a lower pH. You could use this for blueberries and azaleas, but also tomatoes do love an acidic soil. They can thrive in a neutral soil as well. We're kind of doing this one as an experiment, and we're going to see how it thrives or doesn't thrive in acidic conditions. When we opened up the bag of this one, we noticed a really nice, rich, dark mix with a balance of fine material and some larger particles for structure. But it had a really good feel to it, and it held moisture really well. Also looked like it was going to do well with air. so good aeration in the root system. The ingredients are built up of compost, aged bark, peat moss, and lobster or crab compost, which is kind of Coast of Maine's signature. This gives you both organic matter and some slow-release nutrients. It is dialed in for acid-loving plants, which is huge. Here in Southeast Texas, where our native soils aren't always ideal for things like blueberries or other acid-loving plants. Secondly, it's nutrient-rich right out of the bag. It's got the manure base in it, so that helps give a good fertilizer value that some of the other soils might not have. Lastly, it's got really good moisture retention without being too heavy. The price point of this is kind of on the premium side for a smaller bag. It took us 2 bags to fill this pot almost, but it isn't a universal soil. This is not something that we would recommend for everything, not for any plant that doesn't like acidic conditions. And again, this is kind of an experiment to see how it performs. And depending on how you water with this, it can stay a little too moist because of the peat content. So container drainage is still really important here. If you're growing any kind of acid-loving plant, this might be a great solution. We're going to see how it fits up to the rest. Next up, we're taking a look at Heirloom Soils veggie and herb soil. This one is designed specifically with vegetables and herbs in mind, so the focus here is on both nutrition and structure to support great productive plants. When you open the bag, you'll notice it's a really nice, rich mix with a great, fine texture. There's very few chunky pieces, but the texture and the consistency provides a really good airflow. It's got a good balance. It's not too heavy, not too light, and this is exactly what we want for raised beds and containers. Ingredient-wise, you're looking at something that is made primarily of leaf mold compost, aged forest products, and organic amendments, but it's also microbially inoculated, so it is a living soil, and that really helps your plants get nutrients. So right out of the bag, it's got some good values that can help you be successful. It is tailored for vegetables and herbs, so it's a good grab and grow option if you don't want to overthink the soil. It has really good moisture retention with a cocoa coir base instead of peat moss, and it does not reject water if it dries completely out, unlike peat moss-based soils. So it does really good for peppers and tomatoes. And third, it's a good middle ground between budget soils and premium mixes. Thanks. Like most bag soils, you're probably not going to find fertilizer in them. This does not have any fertilizer or manure-based amendment to it. So you are going to need to feed right out of the gate. And it pairs really well with a good organic fertilizer. And if you're growing heavy feeders and you're trying to maximize production, you may want to amend it consistently. Heirloom Soils veggie and herb is a solid, purpose-built mix, and it's something easy and effective for growing food crops in containers or raised beds. So if you're looking for a good starting point, this might work out well. Because it doesn't have any fertilizer amendments to it, I'm curious to see how it's going to stack up against some of the others in growth and vigor. Our next tomato plant is going in Landscaper's Pride's Gardener's Magic. Now this soil is a little different from a typical potting soil. It's really more of a soil conditioner or a compost blend, a garden soil per se, than a standalone potting mix. When you open the bag, you'll notice it's got a nice, dark, rich texture to it. It's heavier than most potting soils, and that's because it's packed with organic material. It's got composted forest products like pine bark and other decomposed material, and it's really good at improving soil structure. So this product is primarily a garden soil, so it's used to fill raised beds and get a good vegetable garden going, but it is labeled to be used in containers, and we've done so many times. It's with its ingredient build, also carrying a little bit of broiler litter, it does bring a fertilizer value to the table that some of the other soils do not. It drains really well and has great structure, so you could also add this into other soils to help increase water holding capacity. It's also very affordable. As a garden soil that doubles somewhat as a potting mix, it does really well at an affordable rate, falling towards the lower tier of price points of any of the soils we're trialing today. You do have to be careful, as it does have a lot of organic matter in it, so you might see the plants not grow as quick as some of the others because some of those organic materials are still breaking down. But overall, we see even plant growth with it, and I'm curious to see how it's going to stack up against the rest. Our seventh soil is going to be Heirloom Soils Rose and Bloomers. This particular mix is very similar to the veggie and herb, but it's built leaning a little bit more towards blooming type plants. Back from whenever I first started, Randy Lemon always recommended rose soil for growing veggies in the garden, and that's what led me to include this in this trial. When you open up the bag, you're going to notice a very similar rich texture, a very fine texture that's primarily based out of leaf mold compost and forest products that have been broken down. It does have a little bit of sandy texture to it, a little bit of acidity component, and it is a living soil, so it's microbially inoculated, just like some of the other soils we've looked at thus far. While it is tailored for blooms, which can be helpful when we're dealing with tomatoes because we want to have a lot of blooms to help set a high amount of fruit if we're concerned about production. So it can help us in that instance. The soil does hold moisture pretty well without getting overly soggy, and that's due to the cocoa core base. It is a peat-free soil, so it's going to help keep plants from getting stressed or from completely drying out and not being able to obtain water. Now this soil, just like the veggie and herb, is not amended with any fertilizer, so we are going to need to feed from the get-go and ensure that we actually have a solid base of nutrition because, again, tomatoes are heavy feeders, and if we're focused on production, we've got to make sure that that's important. Heirloom Soils Rose and Bloomer is going to be a good choice, and I think it's going to do well. While I'm not sure how it will compare to the other acid-loving soil from coast of Maine, again, we'll see in time. Now, as we finish up this soil trial, we're going to end where we started with another product from Fox Farms. We're going to check out their Ocean Forest. The Ocean Forest is a nutrient-rich product right out of the bag. When you open it up, it's got a complete light, fluffy texture. It's well aerated and has a fine mix of material with a little bit of larger particles for drainage. Ingredient-wise is where it stands out. It's created mostly of aged forest products, and that's how most of the Fox Farms products are. And it's going to bring in some nutrient values from earthworm castings, bat guano, fish emulsion, crab meal. It's also, just like Happy Frog, got calcium and dolomitic lime, which is really important for helping prevent blossom end rot. It is heavily amended, so your plants will get a strong start, but it will still need to be fertilized. No bagged product typically feeds long enough for a heavy feeding plant like a tomato. It's got great drainage and aeration, which is going to help prevent overwatering issues and give really healthy roots. It's versatile and does well for vegetables as really any other plant, flowers, houseplants, herbs. On the negative side, just like Happy Frog, it is an expensive soil. It is one of the more premium choices that you can find. Sometimes it can be a little too hot for sensitive plants or seedlings, so be careful depending on what you're planting or how tender your seedling is. The nutrient load can sometimes cause issues if you're not careful. And like many soils, you might see some variability in texture from bag to bag, but overall ocean forest is a great option. So there we have it. We have 8 tomatoes growing in 8 different soils, all in the same size container and all the same variety. Each soil has a different ingredient build, some with fertilizer, some without. So stay tuned for weekly updates as we'll see which one is doing better than the other, and we'll talk about the reasons why. Because at the end of the day, all these soils are good for something, some better suited for others, and we can look at ways that we can make improvements to each one if needed to make you more successful.